What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today, I want to talk about the New York Giants' fallout from that win last week. Obviously, we prepare for the season finale tomorrow versus the Philadelphia Eagles, but at the time of recording this, the Giants are still slated to pick number 4 overall in the 2025 NFL Draft. And when we're looking back on last week, it obviously had a detrimental effect on the Giants' draft positioning. And as a result of all of that, the fallout is the Giants are likely out of range for the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL draft class. You know, when you're looking at the projections right now, a lot of mock drafts from experts and insiders around the league have both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders going in the top 3 selections. And the Giants picking up 4, really tough to grab that quarterback when they both go off the board before you are up on the clock. So I wanted to take a look today and kind of just discuss a couple of mid-round quarterback prospects who have gotten a lot of attention both in the Fireside Giants comment section. You guys have been asking for us to talk about these guys, and also just around the NFL media landscape. There's been a lot of buzz for Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, and also, here he is, Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart, a guy who seems to be a real fan favorite in Fireside Giants comment section. So I just want to get my take on these guys, discuss them, some of the pros and cons, and why they might make sense for the New York Giants if the Giants do indeed miss out on a quarterback in the first round of the draft. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. And the first one I want to talk about, I know that Jackson Dart is on the graphic here, and we will get into him in a minute, but I want to talk about the Jalen Hurts route. That's going to be the quote that we talk about for Jalen Milroe. So if you guys didn't see, there was recently a report. We did post it on Fireside Giants social media, so make sure you guys are following us there. But there was a report from Matt Miller of ESPN, a huge NFL draft analyst, a lot of insider info that he shares every single year, talks to a lot of scouts and NFL front office executives, and he recently did an interview with the New York Post talking about the quarterbacks that the Giants could potentially target. He circled Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. This was the quote that he said. He said, he is a project, but especially if you were like, we want to go the Jalen Hurts route, that's your guy. Essentially equating that to him being a second-round pick. Now, if you guys don't know, Jalen Milroe did declare for the NFL draft last week. That was a bit of a surprise. He didn't look too great towards the conclusion of Alabama's season. Now, he had a lot of highs, but he also had a lot of lows during this collegiate season. He ended up rushing for 20 touchdowns. He's an elite dual-threat player. Man, he can run when the ball is in his hands. He can make some plays, but he also only threw, I think, 16 touchdown passes to 11 interceptions. He's very inconsistent and inaccurate as a passer, but those same traits, great rushing ability, inconsistencies as a passer and as a decision maker, those same traits have been present in other quarterbacks coming out of the draft who have found a lot of success in the NFL. Jalen Hurts being one of them. Hurts is a guy who was part of that really, really stacked 2020 NFL draft class. I mean, at the top of that class, you had Joe Burrow, number 1 to the Bengals. Number 5, you had Justin Herbert to the Los Angeles Chargers. And number 6, Tua Tagovailoa to the Miami Dolphins. 3 franchise quarterbacks in the top 6 picks. And then fast forward all the way to the second round, and Philadelphia managed to land their franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And now, of course, with Jalen Hurts, he also, like Milroe, was far from a finished product. Now, you could probably argue he was a little bit more refined as a passer than Milroe. Milroe is very raw as a quarterback, but Hurts still needed some refinement, needed some development, gets drafted in the second round out of Oklahoma, formerly of Alabama, transferred to Oklahoma, gets drafted out of the second round, sits basically his entire rookie season, takes over in year 2, and all of a sudden, the Eagles are juggernauts and Super Bowl contenders on a perennial basis. So that's the idea. That's the line of thinking here is there's going to be quarterbacks who go in the first round in the top 10 picks. If the Giants aren't able to land one of those guys, could they go the Jalen Hurts route? Second round of the draft, early second round, take the best quarterback available. Would that quarterback be Jalen Milroe? That's what most people think. That's who most people think would be the top quarterback come the second round of the draft. And here's some things about Milroe. Like I said, very inconsistent as a passer, but man, he is a great runner, like elite. Like I mentioned, 20 rushing touchdowns. Pretty sure he went for over 1,000 yards easily. He had 3 rushing touchdowns versus LSU in that matchup earlier this year. I mean, the guy can run with the football in his hands. He makes plays. He forces missed tackles. He's a dual threat, truly. It's just his passing. And his decision-making isn't all that bad. Oftentimes, the problem with Jalen Milroe, he makes the right decision, but the ball just doesn't get there. He's not accurate. And it really comes down to mechanics. And there was an NFL scout who spoke to the 33rd team as well. And I saw that report, and they were basically saying, I can teach him mechanics. My coach can teach him mechanics. We can teach him how to throw the ball better, but we can't teach him 4.3 speed, and he has that. And you can't teach anybody 4.3 speed, but Jalen Milroe does have elite speed from the quarterback position. So over the last several years, we've seen a shift in the NFL where, the age of the pure pocket passer has pretty much died. Even these guys who do win from the pocket, the best quarterbacks who throw from the pocket, do have plus athleticism. Like Joe Burrow, you think of him, you don't think of his rushing ability. He did score a 50-yard rushing touchdown on the Giants earlier this year. He has the escapability to get out of the pocket and make plays with his legs. Now, oftentimes he's making plays with his legs by extending time and then throwing the ball. But sometimes those best quarterbacks can run. And obviously, there's higher end examples of that. Jaden Daniels in this last draft is a hell of a runner. He makes a lot of plays with his legs. And obviously, Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP and could actually be a 3-time MVP by the end of this season as well. Running ability from a quarterback position is more valuable than ever. And I actually think a great player to highlight for that is Josh Allen. And that's where I'm going to make a connection with Jalen Milroe, Josh Allen, and Brian Daboll. Now, let's take the potential firing of Brian Daboll out of the equation here, because we really don't know what the future holds for Daboll and Joe Schoen. We'll find out in probably a week. Actually, not even a week. We'll probably find out in like 3 days. But let's say Brian Daboll is retained. Well, Brian Daboll actually has a coaching connection to Alabama, as we all know, was the offensive coordinator there in 2017 when he coached Jalen Hurts. So that connection between Daboll and Hurts could actually trigger something in his memory to say, hey, Milroe, similar player, similar schools, same school at a time. Obviously, Hurts graduated from Oklahoma, as I mentioned, but similar player who I've coached before, and he has the tools and traits which another NFL scout, and this is where things get really interesting. It was a 33rd team scout said, I'm sorry, it wasn't a 33rd team scout. It was Matt Miller, the ESPN analyst that I mentioned at the beginning of this. He actually likened Jalen Milroe to Josh Allen, who we all know Brian Daboll famously developed into a superstar for the Bills. So the quote from him was, it's like early Josh Allen. You see where he's going with the ball, and it's like, okay, that's a good decision. But then it's 10 yards over the guy's head. It might be bad at times because he needs his mechanics reworked, but amazing at times because he's a playmaker. And that is the argument that you can make for Jalen Milroe. Hey, guys, I haven't really given my opinion and take on Milroe. I don't take this as me saying I want to take Milroe. Just wanted to break him down and give you a profile of him, an early preview. He's a guy who has gotten some really lofty comparisons. Obviously, he gets comparisons to Lamar Jackson because he ran for 20 touchdowns last year. He's got elite rushing ability. He's got maybe 4.3 speed. Elite in that regard. But he gets comparisons to Josh Allen as well, because if you guys remember, coming out of Wyoming, Josh Allen was a bad passer. He was wildly inaccurate. Now we watch him play every Sunday, and we see him fit the ball into the tightest windows, and he throws dimes all over the place. And a lot of that credit does get given to Brian Daboll at times when you talk about the career trajectory of Josh Allen. So it's kind of this line of thinking, if Daboll's here, if the Giants miss out on those top quarterbacks and Jalen Milroe is available in the second round, could Milroe be inherited by Daboll? Could Daboll potentially unlock something in him and make him this kind of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen hybrid? I mean, Josh Allen in his own right is a hell of a runner from the quarterback position. But again, that's what you're piecing together here with these reports from the 33rd team and ESPN's Matt Miller. What they're trying to build here is a case for Milroe as a second-round flyer, who the ceiling is limitless for a 4.3 speed quarterback with a strong arm who just needs his mechanics reworked and needs to work on his accuracy. That ceiling could be unmatched, but the floor is obviously very low. If you can't hit your receivers, can you play quarterback at the next level? If he doesn't fix the accuracy, he's not going to be a successful starting quarterback in the NFL. But he might be worth a flyer in the second round. That's going to be the argument that I make. This is my opinion. If the Giants truly do not find a way to land a quarterback in the first round, obviously you guys know that's what I want to do. I'm a proponent of drafting quarterbacks early. But if for some reason they legitimately, let's say they win tomorrow, they beat the Eagles tomorrow, they're picking 9, 3 quarterbacks come off the board, and they don't want to take QB4 in this weak quarterback draft class. I mean, maybe you wait for the second round of the draft and you do take a Milroe just because the ceiling is absolutely there, and you just hope and pray you've got the right coaching and environment around him to nourish him and develop him. Now, I will also make the argument, same way for Josh Allen when he came into the NFL. Tyrod Taylor was a starting quarterback for the Bills. That was the bridge. If the Giants do draft a Jalen Milroe, they're going to need to sign a quality bridge because he is an unfinished product. But if you're able to be patient with him, take your time with him, and build an offense around his skill set, because it is a very unique skill set, I could see a path where Jalen Milroe is a good quarterback in the NFL. Like I said, limitless ceiling. but we just have to see if he goes into the right situation, and we have to determine whether or not the New York Giants are going to have the right head coach and environment to make this the right situation for him. So that's my take on Jalen Milroe. We'll continue to dive into him and discuss him further throughout the rest of the offseason as we lead into the draft. But I wanted to give my initial thoughts and impressions on him since he did recently declare for the draft and is now getting some buzz as a Jalen Hurts type player in the second round of the NFL draft. So that's my take on it. And before we move on to Jackson Dart, who I know a lot of you guys are excited to hear my take on because you've been commenting about him a lot, I do want to give a shout out to today's sponsor of the episode, which is, of course, BetUS. And I want to go ahead and take a look at some of the lines that they have for this weekend's games. So BetUS, a sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry. I'm looking at this Jacksonville Jaguars versus Indianapolis Colts game. And I know what you guys are thinking. Why would you want to bet on such an ugly game with two bad football teams? Well, it's actually a pretty easy line of thinking on this bet. The Jacksonville Jaguars have the worst pass defense in the NFL. Only two teams in the NFL surrender over 250 passing yards per game. The Jaguars surrender 257.7 passing yards per game this season. They're the worst. Joe Flacco is set to start with Anthony Richardson ruled out again in the season finale for the Colts. It's a rivalry game, and if you're looking at Flacco's stat line, well, last time he played the Jaguars back in October, he threw for 359 yards. And most recently versus the Giants last week, he threw for 330. And the week before that versus the Bills, a good defense, 272. So the Colts have been behind a lot. They've been throwing the ball a lot, and Flacco has easily been clearing his line of 239.5 passing yards. So I'm taking the over at minus 114, betting on the fact that the Jaguars defense is booty cheeks, and Joe Flacco is good enough to go for 240 yards. So I'm going to go ahead and throw $10 down on that over at BetUS and hope to win some cash this upcoming weekend. Hey guys, make sure to go check out BetUS, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry, and use code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit match up to $2,000. So guys, go ahead and check out BetUS. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this episode. Back into the quarterback discussion. So I talked about those first round quarterbacks ad nauseum over the last several weeks. You know, Cam Ward, you guys know I love him. Shedeur Sanders, you guys know I like him, but have some question marks. Let's talk about Jackson Dart. This is a player who's recently flown up the draft boards. Obviously, there's a connection here for Giants fans. We see an Ole Miss quarterback. We think of Eli Manning. We get glitter in our eyes, right? Because we're thinking about, man, last time we took an Ole Miss quarterback, it worked out. Let's see if we can do that again. And usually I would scoff at that kind of line of thinking and say, guys, just because a player came from a school and was good for us doesn't mean they're going to be good for us again. But actually, I really like Jackson Dart, so I'm not going to scoff at it. I watched that game versus Duke. I watched every pass that he threw in that game. The kid is wildly accurate, and what I really love about him, he's got great pocket presence and like picture perfect mechanics. He's 6'2", 230 or something. I don't know. He's built well, in my opinion. He actually kind of reminds me of JJ McCarthy a little bit. And obviously, we just talked about McCarthy recently on this channel. And a lot of you long-term viewers know last year, I was a big JJ McCarthy guy. I'm not necessarily comparing them, different ages, they're different schools, different offenses, but just in terms of their mechanics and the way that they're built, they're pretty similar height and just very clean passing mechanics. The ball comes out quick. It's a quick trigger arm release. And I do like that from Jackson Dart. And I think that sometimes with quarterbacks, it's kind of like really a meeting of two minds here. You've got the Jalen Milroes of the world where mechanics are a mess and he needs to be coached and fixed to totally revamp his accuracy, right? And then you've got guys like Jackson Dart who come in with a much higher mechanical floor, and now we need to unlock the other parts of their game that can elevate their ceiling. And those guys with the higher floor usually end up being the middle round picks. The guys with the more potential, the room to grow, like a Milroe, younger, more explosive of an athlete, those guys go earlier in the draft. But every now and then, you've got these guys who are mechanically sound who go late. I'm thinking of Brock Purdy, a Dak Prescott. These guys go later in the draft, but they've got sound mechanics, and now it's just about building the right team around them. And they end up becoming franchise quarterbacks sometimes. So I could see a world where that is Jackson Dart in this draft class. He's currently got a third or fourth round projection. I think when it's all said and done, he could sneak his way into the second round of the draft. I mean, if you're looking at the stats that the kid had this past season, not only in that game versus Duke, which I know a lot of you guys watched because after that game, you were commenting on our comment section. In that game, he had 404 yards and 4 touchdowns with 0 interceptions, a 52-20 win. The throws that he made in that game, though, were like legitimate pro throws, tight window, a lot of touch, great spiral, like moving out of the pocket. He had one where he rolled to the left, set his feet, and just quickly beamed that thing about 40 yards downfield, rope onto the sideline, hell of a catch by the receiver. there were some legitimate pro throws on his film. He had a touchdown over the left sideline into the corner, that just beautiful touch on that ball, and it just dropped in right on the shoulder. And I was thinking, man, could we see some throws like that given the Malik Neighbors? He got a couple against the Colts recently. And, listen, he's gotten a couple back shoulder fades that were well thrown recently, but throughout the year, that was lacking. And a guy who could just effortlessly drop those in on Neighbors day in and day out, give me a quarterback with that ability. Jackson Dart, if there's one thing that I took away from that Duke game, he's got that touch and he's got that ability to throw that back shoulder ball. But just kind of further discussing Dart, again, those stats, he finished the year with a 69.3% completion rate, 4,279 passing yards, and 29 passing touchdowns. All of those led the ACC, and he only threw 6 interceptions. He had a 180.7 passer rating and 10.8 yards per attempt. Both of those led the nation, not just the ACC, but the nation, led all of Division I football. So this guy actually turned in a much better final collegiate season than I think people are even giving him credit for, because that stat line is like bonkers. That's a really, really good statistical season. Now, obviously, he's playing in the ACC. It's not the SEC. He's not going to the college football playoffs. It's nothing like that. But I think that if you watch the film and you combine that with the stats and analytics, you'll see that this is a prospect who is probably being undervalued. There's data there to suggest there's something more to be unlocked in Jackson Dart, but there's already a solid baseline of talent that's worth investing in. So this is a guy who, every year we try and identify the guys that we really like, that we really believe in, and then the guys who we would love to take flyers on the middle rounds because there's certain parts of their game that we believe in. Jackson Dart's one of those mid-round flyers for me, for sure. And obviously, mid-round quarterbacks usually get overdrafted. Usually a fourth-round guy goes in the second round, and that's fine. Like, I would be willing to take a Dart in the second round if the Giants don't land a quarterback, because the talent is clearly there. It's just about development. And I actually found this quote interesting. This is Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports spoke to an NFL scout, a longtime NFL scout, he said, anonymously. And the quote was, "He's going to be a major steal in the draft. Throws the ball downfield as well as anyone," which I realize is kind of this lost skill in today's game, but that's what makes him so interesting. Get Dart a couple of speed guys, and he can really hurt you. End quote. And I'll say, just from initial feedback or initial impressions of me watching a couple of his games recently, I do agree with this assessment in some ways. He throws the ball downfield exceptionally well, and I think it's the touch on his passes. We've been critical in the past. Like, we were very critical of Daniel Jones when he was here with the Giants because his downfield throws often lacked touch. They were often just ropes, bullets downfield, and it made it tough for the receivers to adjust and get under them in time. And, if you didn't have great body control, those are tough catches to grab. That was often detrimental. Even the ball was accurate and hit the receiver's hand, sometimes it just didn't have enough of a softness to it. And some of those better quarterbacks with really talented arms, they've got an ability to not only throw the ball accurately downfield, but make that ball extremely catchable. And that's just kind of the impression that I got with Jackson Dart, is that he throws a very soft, catchable touch pass. And that's really beneficial for speed guys downfield who want to get under the ball. And so I think Dart, that's a good assessment from that NFL scout there, where he does throw the ball downfield as well as anyone. And yeah, it does get lost in today's game because there's so many great downfield passers, but he still has got some interesting traits to his downfield game. But really what I like about him, man, he's cool under pressure. He stands in the pocket well. He can get out of the pocket quickly and then reset his feet. Just a mechanically sound quarterback with a really nice ball flight. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He's not exactly going to throw it through a brick wall, but man, he gets it there in time and he gets it out on time. And, and he gets it there with some really nice ball flight. Like, it's just what I got to say about Jackson Dart. I like the way that he throws the football at a baseline. So again, I just wanted to talk about these two guys briefly here, 20-minute episode today, and just talk about their baseline talents. And now here's the fun part. For the next several weeks, we're going to be diving into the film on these guys on the channel, maybe even doing live film breakdowns and stuff. So, and anybody else that you guys suggest, these are two guys that you guys have suggested, wanted to hear my thoughts on. So I jumped in today and I want to give you my thoughts, but I got a lot more studying to do on both of these guys and the other guys, Sanders and Ward. But the more that I watched Jackson Dart, the more impressed I was. And so I think that there's a chance NFL teams are going to feel similarly as they continue to do their work in this pre-draft process. And I could see by the time we get to April, so the guy who started out as a 5th-round pick, now they're saying 3rd or 4th, I could see him going early 2nd. And I could see it being a debate between Milroe or Dart when it's all said and done. Because Jackson Dart's got some serious talent, and he throws the ball really well, and I like the way that he plays. But again, Jalen Milroe's athleticism, his potential, limitless. It's really, really exciting when you see a player with that kind of elite athleticism at the quarterback position. So both of those guys are going to be interesting. Honestly, if I'm being honest with you guys, I hope that neither of these guys become New York Giants, because I hope somehow we lose tomorrow and a bunch of other crap happens and the Giants are picking number one again. They take Cam Ward and we ride off into the sunset, crash for Cam. But realistically, we want to cover all of our bases here on Fireside Giants and give you guys as much info as possible. So wanted to talk about the guys at the top of the draft, as we have many times. Let's talk about some of these guys in the middle rounds. What if the Giants swing out in round 1, maybe round 2, 3, 4, 5? That's when they draft a quarterback. We'll see. It's definitely a possibility. So I wanted to talk about these two guys again, because I think that they're interesting, high upside developmental prospects. And those are always guys who intrigue me as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. So Jackson Dart, I really like him. Thank you guys for putting me on. Shout out to my friend John Thompson for putting me on and telling me to go watch Jackson Dart, because he thinks that I play a lot like him in flag football. Championship winner right here. So reminder of that. But yeah, really like Jackson Dart. Really like Jalen Milroe in some ways. Not that I'm head over heels for either of them and willing to take them the first round, but I do like certain aspects of their game, and I do see a lot of room for development. I think with the right coaching and with the right players around them, both of those guys could be really good players. But I think this is the best way to close this. I think that their success is more dependent on what's around them than top first round quarterbacks would be. In the top first round, I want those guys to be, they can transcend whatever situation they're in and still be good. Like I would say Drake May last year, I think he could have went to a plethora of teams, 10 different teams, and he would have been good on any of them. That's how I felt about him. Jackson Dart, I feel like, can go to 1 or 2 teams with the right situation and become a good player. Similarly to Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's great because he's on the 49ers. If Brock Purdy was on the Giants, I think he would have just been a normal 7th round pick who flamed out in a year, right? So I think we can agree with that, with the way the Giants develop their talent. So I think it's going to be really crucial this offseason. How do the Giants approach this? What do they do in their front office and coaching staff? Can they put the right pieces around them? And if they don't get a quarterback, can they maximize the talent of a Dart or a Milroe in the NFL draft, and so on and so forth? So it's going to be really interesting. But again, guys, there's a lot of time between now and April. Maybe my minds will change on these guys. Maybe I'll think they suck by the time we get to April. Maybe I'll think they're worth a first overall pick. Who knows? Neither of those are very likely, but it's always possible. So make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to leave a like. Make sure to go check out BetUS, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry. Make sure you guys go follow us. My Twitter, I've been dropping heaters at Anthony_Rivardo and at Fireside Giants on all social media platforms. Our Fireside Giants Instagram, man, we have been posting some great content there. Don't miss out. But yeah, guys, I'll definitely catch you all in the next one. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and leave us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify. And let's go Giants.